he had first visited at the time of the Ambrumésy burglary, and then only rapidly, without lingering. But what did it matter? Though he had to devote 10 years of his life to his investigation, he would carry it to a successful issue. Lupin was there. He could see him. He could feel him there. He expected to come upon him at the next turn of the road, on the skirt of the next wood, outside the next village. And, though continually disappointed, he seemed to find in each disappointment a fresh reason for persisting. Often he would fling himself on the slope by the roadside and plunge into wild examination of the copy of the document which he always carried on him, a copy, that is to say, with vowels taking the place of the figures. I, A, I, A, I, wa, I, ou, I, o, o, I, e, oui, I, e, I. Often also, according to his habit, he would lie down flat on his stomach in the tall grass and think for hours. He had time enough. The future belonged to him. With wonderful patience, he tramped from the Seine to the sea, and from the sea to the Seine, going gradually farther, retracing his steps, and never quitting the ground until, theoretically speaking, there was not a chance left of gathering the smallest particle upon it. He studied and explored Montivilliers and Saint-Romany and Octeville and Gonneville and Criquetot. At night he knocked at the peasants' doors and asked for a lodging. After dinner they smoked together and chatted. He made them tell him the stories which they told one another on the long winter nights, and he never omitted to insinuate slyly, "What about the needle? The legend of the Hollow Needle. Don't you know that?"
Upon my word, I don't. Never heard of it.
Just think, an old wives' tale. Something that has to do with a needle. An enchanted needle, perhaps. I don't know. Nothing. No legend, no recollection. And the next morning he walked blithely away again. One day he passed through the pretty village of Saint-Jouin, which overlooks the sea, and descending among the chaos of rocks that have slipped from cliffs, he climbed up to the tableland and went in the direction of the dry valley of Bruneval, Cap d'Antifer, and the little creek of Belle Plage. He was walking gaily and lightly, feeling a little tired, perhaps, but glad to be alive, so glad even, that he forgot Lupin and the mystery of the Hollow Needle and Victoire and Shears, and interested himself in the sight of nature. The blue sky, the great emerald sea, all glittering in the sunshine. Some straight slopes and remains of brick walls, in which he seemed to recognize the vestiges of a Roman camp, interested him. Then his eyes fell upon a sort of little castle, built in imitation of an ancient fort, with cracked turrets and Gothic windows. It stood on a jagged, rugged, rising promontory, almost detached from the cliff. A barred gate, flanked by iron handrails and bristling spikes, guarded the narrow passage. Beautrelet succeeded in climbing over, not without some difficulty. Over the pointed door, which was closed with an old rusty lock, he read the words, "Fort de Fréfossé." He did not attempt to enter, but turning to the right, after going down a little slope, he embarked upon a path that ran along a ridge of land furnished with a wooden handrail. Right at the end was a cave of very small dimensions, forming a sort of watch-tower at the point of the rock in which it was hollowed out, a rock falling abruptly into the sea. There was just room to stand up in the middle of the cave. Multitudes of inscriptions crossed one another on the walls. An almost square hole, cut in the stone, opened like a dormer window on the land side, exactly opposite Fort Fréfossé, the crenellated top of which appeared at 30 or 40 yards distance. Beautrelet threw off his knapsack and sat down. He had had a hard and tiring day. He fell asleep for a little. Then the cool wind that blew inside the cave woke him up. He sat for a few minutes without moving, absent-minded, vague-eyed. He tried to reflect, to recapture his still torpid thoughts, and as he recovered his consciousness, he was on the point of rising, when he received the impression that his eyes, suddenly fixed, suddenly wide open, saw— A thrill shook him from head to foot. His hands clenched convulsively, and he felt the beads of perspiration forming at the roots of his hair. "No, no," he stammered. "It's a dream, an hallucination. Let's look. It's not possible." He plunged down on his knees and stooped over. Two huge letters, each perhaps a foot long, appeared cut in relief in the granite of the floor. Those two letters, clumsily but plainly carved, with their corners rounded and their surface smoothed by the wear and tears of centuries, were a D and an F. D and F! Oh, bewildering miracle! D and F, just two letters of the document! Oh, Beautrelet had no need to consult it to bring before his mind that group of letters in the fourth line, the line of the measurements and indications. He knew them well. They were inscribed for all time at the back of his pupils, encrusted for good and all in the very substance of his brain. He rose to his feet, went down the steep road, climbed back along the old fort, hung on to the spikes of the rail again, in order to pass, and walked briskly toward a shepherd whose flock was grazing some way off on a dip in the tableland. "That cave over there, that cave—" His lips trembled, and he tried to find the words that would not come. The shepherd looked at him in amazement. At last, Isidore repeated: "Yes, that cave over there, to the right of the fort. Has it a name?"
Yes, I should think so. All the Étretat folk like to call it the Demoiselle.
"What? What? What's that you say?"
Why, of course. It's the Chambre des Demoiselles.
Isidore felt like flying at his throat, as though all the truth lived in that man, and he hoped to get it from him at one swoop, to tear it from him. The Demoiselle, one of the words, one of the only three known words of the document. A whirlwind of madness shook Beautrelet where he stood, and it rose all around him, blew upon him like a tempestuous squall that came from the sea, that came from the land, that came from every direction, and whipped him with great lashes of the truth. He understood. The document appeared to him in its real sense. The Chambre des Demoiselles, Étretat. That's it, he thought, his brain filled with light. It must be that. But why didn't I guess earlier? He said to the shepherd in a low voice: "That will do. Go away. You can go. Thank you." The man, not knowing what to think, whistled to his dog and went. Left alone, Beautrelet returned to the fort. He had almost passed it when suddenly he dropped to the ground and lay cowering against a piece of wall. And, wringing his hands, he thought: "I must be mad. If he were to see me, or his accomplices, I've been moving about for an hour." He did not stir another limb. The sun went down, little by little. The night mingled with the day, blurring the outline of things. Then, with little imperceptible movements, flat on his stomach, gliding, crawling, he crept along one of the points of the promontory to the extreme edge of the cliff. He reached it. Stretching out his hands, he pushed aside some tufts of grass, and his head appeared over the precipice. Opposite him, almost level with the cliff, in the open sea, rose an enormous rock, over 80 yards high, a colossal obelisk, standing straight on its granite base, which showed at the surface of the water, and tapering towards the summit like the giant tooth of a monster of the deep. White with the dirty grey-white of the cliff, the awful monolith was streaked with horizontal lines marked by flint and displaying the slow work of centuries, which had heaped alternate layers of lime and pebble stone, one atop of the other. Here and there, a fissure, a break, and wherever these occurred, a scrap of earth with grass and leaves.